Have you ever noticed how a single cold glance can unsettle you for an entire day? How an unanswered message can keep you awake at night? The world touches us through the smallest things, yet these are often enough to stir the soul. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the outside world no longer holds that power over you. You are no longer swept away by careless words, no longer shaken by another's silence, and no longer allowing the storms around you to extinguish the calm within. People often believe peace is a gift, a stroke of luck reserved for a few. But in truth, it is discipline. It is the result of what you deliberately build each day. We cannot control the wind, but we can learn to hold the rudder firmly. When you recognize this power, you stop waiting for serenity from the outside and begin cultivating tranquility from within. This path is not easy, but it is the only one that leads to true freedom. And that is the journey we are about to explore together. 1. Peace does not come from luck, but from discipline. Human beings often believe that peace is the natural reward for those whose lives encounter little turbulence. People assume that to have inner calm, they must possess the perfect home, stable finances, a smooth career, and relationships free of conflict. This belief drives many to spend their entire lives seeking peace in circumstances, only to be disappointed when the smallest shift from outside is enough to shatter it. In truth, peace is not a gift granted by fortune. It is the result of discipline, of consistent and deliberate choices you make each day. Peace, like any skill, must be trained with intention to endure. If you look closer, you will see the sharp difference between one who depends on circumstances and one who trains the mind. The first has a fragile peace, like a candle before the wind, easily shaken by the slightest breeze. The second is like a flame shielded in a furnace, steady even when storms rage outside. What makes the difference is not fate or luck, but discipline. Each time you choose silence instead of a sharp retort, you train for peace. Each time you feel anger rise and choose a deep breath over harsh words, you are training. Each time you want to argue to prove you are right, but instead choose stillness, you strengthen the inner flame. Peace does not appear by chance. It comes from the moments you teach yourself not to be carried away. The truth is, this process is not easy. It is not a path lined with roses, but one marked by trials and sometimes by pain. As you begin training, you realize that peace must be engraved into your nervous system through repetition. Just as no one gains strength from a single workout, you cannot become calm through a single choice. It requires steady repetition, constant observation, and unceasing reminders that peace is not about what you possess, but how you respond. The more you train, the clearer it becomes that peace is an active practice, not a passive state of waiting. The Stoics once said, "True freedom comes only when you learn to rule your mind instead of letting it chase circumstances." When you know you can build peace from within, you stop waiting for the world to become easier. You understand that life is uncertain, but that does not mean you must live in constant unease. Instead of hoping the wind will cease, you learn to steady the oar. Instead of wishing the sea would calm, you learn to adjust the sail. And in that practice, peace becomes part of your nature, not something fragile, dependent on others or on the outside world. The truth is, peace never arrives by chance. It is the fruit of choosing to discipline the mind, of responding with intention instead of impulse, of keeping the inner flame steady even when the storm outside howls. When peace is built on this foundation of discipline, it ceases to be fragile. It becomes inner strength, a possession no one can take away. 2. Strength resides in the pause. In life, we often think strength lies in the ability to react quickly to every situation. Modern society praises speed, treating instant reaction as proof of intelligence and competence. But for the mind, wisdom is not in striking back immediately, it is in the ability to pause. That brief pause before speaking, before acting, before letting emotion erupt, is where true strength lies. For in that pause, one becomes clear enough to distinguish impulse from choice, aligned with lasting values. The pause may last only a few seconds, but its power exceeds what we usually imagine. When the unexpected strikes, emotions often surge before reason. Anger, hurt, or fear push to seize control. If we react at once, we usually obey fleeting emotions, and the consequences often linger. But if we can pause, take a breath, allow the wave to settle, we create space for clarity to emerge. In that pause, you are no longer the victim of feeling. You become the observer, and in that role, you reclaim your power. The Stoics taught that self-mastery is not repression of emotion, for repression only builds tension until it bursts. True mastery is the ability to let emotion appear, acknowledge it, but not let it dictate action. The pause is the bridge that shifts you from instinctive reaction to conscious response. It is the turning point where you can choose yield to impulse or step into reason's clarity. Practicing the pause is not easy, for the mind is always urged to respond. When attacked, instinct wants to strike back. In failure, instinct wants to blame. When insulted, instinct wants to prove worth. But each time you pause, you train yourself to step out of the cycle of reaction. Repeated, this habit engraves into the mind a solid strength, making you less vulnerable to outside triggers. The pause is also where peace is nurtured. For it is not the outer world that decides who we are, but how we respond to it. A careless word can ruin your day if you react with anger. But the same word becomes powerless if you pause, breathe, and let it pass. Others may plant seeds of provocation, but whether they take root is decided in the pause you create. True strength is not in winning arguments or reacting faster than others. It is in keeping the mind unmoved. The pause grants you the power of silence, the power of choice, the power of one who knows not every battle is worth fighting. When you understand the value of the pause, you see it as the foundation of self-control, of peace, and of dignity. It is not just a psychological tool, but a principle of life, the way to stand firm amid emotional storms without being swept away. 3. Not every emotion deserves to be nurtured. One of humanity's greatest misconceptions is believing every emotion must be nurtured and preserved. We are taught to be true to our feelings, but being true does not mean letting every emotion dominate the mind. Emotion is only a fleeting signal, reflecting a change in circumstance or perception. It is not always the whole truth. If you treat every feeling as a command to obey, you quickly become a slave to your inner fluctuations. In reality, many emotions appear only briefly before they fade. A word, a gesture, even a silence can spark them. But that does not mean we must dwell on them and turn them into wounds. Emotions may arise from fatigue, old fears, or distorted interpretations. If we nurture them, they grow into unnecessary burdens. The Stoics pointed out that it is not events that cause suffering, but the judgment we attach to them. If the judgment is wrong, the emotion that follows only adds confusion. Wisdom lies in distinguishing which emotions are worth observing and learning from, and which are best released. A deep sorrow may remind us of the value of connection. A justified anger may drive us to correct injustice. But not every feeling holds such worth. Some emotions are mere exaggerations of the mind, turning small matters into imagined tragedies. An unanswered message is not rejection. A thoughtless glance is not contempt. Without discernment, the mind makes neutral events into imaginary wounds. When we nurture every emotion without selection, the soul becomes like soil scattered with seeds at random. Good seeds and weeds sprout together, but the weeds quickly overrun the field. Learning to let trivial emotions pass is an act of cleansing the inner ground, reserving space for seeds of true value. This does not mean becoming unfeeling, it means becoming discerning. You do not deny emotions, you simply refuse to let them define you. Inner peace arises only when you understand that not every emotion deserves to be held and cultivated. Some should be observed, others should be released. And it is this ability to choose that marks maturity. When you learn to honor the emotions that hold real value and let the rest flow away, you find your mind clearer, steadier, and more at peace. 4. Guarding your emotional resources. Human emotions are a finite resource, and like any resource, if not managed and protected, they will quickly run dry. We often waste our mental energy on trivial matters without realizing that our attention and our peace are being drained day by day. Each time you let a careless remark trouble you, each time you allow a thoughtless act to stir your anger, you are letting your most precious resource be consumed by what does not deserve it. The Stoics remind us that while we cannot control everything in life, we can always control where we place our mind and our emotions. Guarding your emotional resources does not mean closing your heart or refusing connection. It means choosing carefully where you give your concern. Just as you would not allow anyone to spend your money at will, you should not allow every word or event to deplete your spirit. This requires a sharp awareness, an ability to discern what is truly worthy of your attention and what is only distraction. When you see this clearly, you no longer give your peace away to small matters, but reserve it for values that endure. An undisciplined mind is like a door left open, where anyone passing by can take a part of your energy. A disciplined mind, one that protects emotional resources, is like a garden fenced and cared for, allowing entry only to what truly nourishes it. The difference lies in setting boundaries, in understanding that your attention and your peace are sacred, not to be scattered, but to be given only to what is worthy. When you know how to protect your emotional resources, you become more deliberate in life. You stop reacting to every small disturbance. You no longer let the storms outside overturn your inner world. Instead, you choose carefully what you allow into your mind. You invest your energy in healthy relationships, in meaningful action, and in building lasting peace. Each emotion you nurture becomes like a wise investment, yielding growth, maturity, and stability. Guarding your emotional resources is an act of self-respect. You do not let others decide your worth through minor provocations. You do not let the outer world dictate your inner state. You do not waste your energy on battles without meaning. When you learn this, you find your peace growing stronger, no longer fragile or tied to circumstance, but preserved as a treasure you will not easily surrender. 5. Sensitivity is a gift, but it must be paired with strength. Sensitivity has long been mistaken for weakness, but in truth, it is a rare gift. Sensitivity allows one to notice subtle details in life, to feel shifts in the atmosphere, to perceive what others overlook. It is the root of empathy, connection, and refined intuition. A sensitive soul can see the subtle shades of another's emotions, can sense what has not yet been spoken, and in this way, sensitivity becomes a bridge between human beings. Yet this gift shines only when it is paired with inner strength. A sensitive person without discipline and resilience is easily swept into the storm of their own perception. Sensitivity then becomes a blade turned inward, wounding them with every minor signal, crushing them with harmless impressions. Without strength, sensitivity becomes a burden, turning its bearer into a hostage of emotion, living in exhaustion and doubt. But combined with strength, sensitivity becomes wisdom, a guiding light, a way to experience life deeply without being consumed by it. The Stoics believe that a good life is not one without emotion, but one where emotion is rightly placed. Sensitivity is not weakness. It is the balance between softness and firmness. Like a string on an instrument, it must be taught to create music, but strong enough not to snap. Sensitivity is the string, and strength is the right tension that makes it melody instead of chaos. With inner strength, you can use sensitivity to build, to support, to create, rather than to exhaust yourself. It is important to understand that strength here is not cold hardness, nor the building of walls to avoid being hurt. True strength is the ability to stand firm when emotions surge. It is the ability to open your heart without fear of being broken. It is the ability to distinguish what deserves your heart and what should pass by. Inner strength allows you to hold sensitivity as a precious gift, while also protecting yourself from needless harm. When sensitivity and strength combine, you become a more complete version of yourself. You can listen deeply without dissolving into another's sorrow. You can feel pain without being shackled by it. You can be moved by beauty and still remain clear-minded. This is the delicate balance between an open heart and a steady mind. In this balance, sensitivity is truly a gift, and strength is the foundation that turns that gift into a blessing rather than a burden. 6. Learning to speak with yourself. Within every person, there is a voice that never stops speaking. It is the inner dialogue we rarely notice, yet it deeply shapes how we see life, how we respond to situations, and whether we find peace within. Left unchecked, that voice becomes a harsh critic, magnifying fears, turning small mistakes into tragedies, eroding trust in ourselves. But if trained and guided, it becomes a wise companion, a source of strength that helps us face challenges with calm and clarity. The Stoics emphasized that people are not harmed by external events, but by what they tell themselves about those events. This shows that inner dialogue is the birthplace of much of our suffering or our peace. When you fail, what breaks you is not the result itself, but the whisper in your mind. I will never succeed. When rejected, the pain is not only silence or distance, but the voice that says, I am not worthy. It is these inner words that either build or destroy confidence and tranquility. Learning to speak with yourself is not about forcing fake positivity nor repeating hollow affirmations. It is about forming a relationship of honesty and steadiness with your own mind. It is the ability to recognize when your inner voice is driven by fear, when it exaggerates, when it pulls you into anxiety. Once you see it, you can adjust the script, turning it toward truth rather than distortion. A trained mind learns to distinguish objective reality from the stories fear creates. Instead of letting the harsh voice declare, "This failure proves I am incapable," you let a steadier voice remind you, "This failure is a step back, but it shows me what to improve." Instead of listening to the panicked whisper, "I am being abandoned," you let clarity say, "Everyone has their path, and their distance does not define my worth." This difference may seem small, but it is the turning point between an anxious soul and a steady one. Your inner dialogue is the soil from which your emotions grow. If you plant seeds of doubt, fear, and self-disdain, then worry and chaos will overrun it. But if you plant patience, reason, and self-respect, then calm and self-mastery will flourish. This is why learning to speak with yourself is not a minor skill, but the foundation of lasting peace. When you master that voice, you are no longer a victim of your mind, but its guide and builder. And once you achieve this, you realize peace was never far. It has always been in the way you speak to yourself each day. 7. Not reacting equals keeping power. In the modern world, quick reaction is often seen as a measure of sharpness and control. People praise those who can answer instantly, respond immediately, and display themselves at once. Yet, when it comes to inner peace and true strength, quick reaction is not power. Real power is revealed in the ability not to react to every provocation, every word, every action of others. Reaction is instinct, but choosing silence, choosing to pause, choosing a conscious response. This is the mark of self-mastery and wisdom. When the unexpected happens, emotions often surge ahead of reason. Instinct pushes us to retaliate, to defend, to argue, to protect our ego. But every time we follow that impulse, we hand control of ourselves to circumstances and to other people. Every outburst is an admission that their words or actions have power over our behavior. That is where power is lost, not because we are weak, but because we allowed instinct to replace clarity. By contrast, when we can remain silent, observe, and choose deliberately, we retain sovereignty over ourselves. The Stoics stressed that a truly strong mind never allows itself to become a puppet of circumstance. Not reacting does not mean tolerating injustice or accepting insult. It means refusing to let the outside world dictate your inner state or your conduct. It is the separation needed to preserve dignity. An insult wounds only if you answer it. If you hold your silence, it fades into nothing but sound. Power lies in choosing when, where, and how to act, rather than being dragged into reaction on another's terms. The strength of not reacting also lies in conserving mental energy. Every time you are drawn into a pointless argument, you trade your peace for the fleeting thrill of winning or losing. But victory in argument never brings lasting satisfaction, because the price paid is the agitation of the mind. By refusing to be drawn in, you preserve clarity, saving your emotional resources for what truly matters. That is the deeper victory, the kind that requires no noise, no proof. Silence in tense moments is not weakness. It is self-respect. It is the statement that you do not need to fight every battle, prove your worth to every observer, or react to affirm your existence. Within that silence lies power, because you show you are not led, not controlled, not uprooted by any storm. Not reacting is not passivity. It is a conscious act, a wise strategy of living. It keeps you steady in turbulence, rooted when the world trembles, and most importantly, it preserves your power to decide who you will be. When you learn the art of not reacting, you learn the art of keeping power. And when you keep that power, you truly become master of your life. 8. Don't take everything personally. One of the greatest causes of lost peace is the habit of taking everything personally. When others seem distant, we assume we have done something wrong. When we hear words we dislike, we think they are aimed directly at us. When events do not go our way, we interpret them as proof of our lack of worth. In truth, most of what others say or do has little to do with us. It flows from their circumstances, their wounds, their fears, and their limitations. If we insist on tying everything to ourselves, we carry burdens that were never ours. The Stoics taught that suffering is not caused by events, but by the judgment we attach to them. Taking things personally is such a judgment, one that distorts reality and turns neutral signals into personal condemnation. A tired look may be nothing more than fatigue, but if we interpret it as contempt, we invent an imaginary wound. It is this misjudgment that drains us, not the event itself. Seeing this difference is the first step to freeing yourself from the cycle of self-inflicted pain. Not taking things personally means stepping back, seeing the wider picture, and no longer placing yourself at the center of every story. The world does not revolve around us, and not every action of others is a reflection of our worth. Everyone is carrying battles and wounds unseen to us. Their reactions are more often a mirror of themselves than a statement about us. Viewing life this way preserves clarity and keeps us from casting ourselves as victims of circumstance. This does not mean ignoring wrongdoing or tolerating disrespect. It means that instead of letting emotions surge at once, you analyze the root. Injustice may need to be addressed, but it need not become an attack on your identity. Harsh words may need boundaries, but they do not need to be carved into your soul. By separating events from your sense of worth, you protect your dignity while keeping your peace intact. When you stop personalizing everything, you feel lighter. Words no longer weigh you down. Actions are no longer verdicts. Events no longer turn into tragedies. You see that peace comes from perceiving things as they are, without exaggeration, without distortion, without making them into stories about yourself. That is true freedom, the freedom of a mind that refuses illusions and clings to the clarity of objective sight. And in that freedom, you find the strength to stand steady despite all that shifts around you. 9. Boundaries, not walls. When people are hurt, the natural response is to shield themselves by building thick walls. Those walls feel safe for a time, for no one can come close enough to wound us again. Yet while they block pain, they also block love, connection, and healing. Walls protect fear, but they imprison the heart, leaving us isolated rather than safe. The Stoics knew life is full of risk, but the solution is not to cut ourselves off from the world. It is to set clear, healthy boundaries. Boundaries are very different from walls. A boundary says, "This I allow in, this I refuse." It does not cut off connection, it shapes it in a healthy way. A boundary is like a door with a lock. You open it when appropriate, and close it when needed. It is an active choice, an expression of awareness and self-respect. Boundaries let you open your heart to love while still protecting your peace against harmful forces. Setting boundaries is also a way of guarding emotional resources. Not everyone has the right to step into your inner life. Not every relationship deserves to remain. Not every situation is worth your energy. With boundaries, you know what aligns with your values and what does not. You learn to say no to what harms while still keeping respect and kindness. Boundaries do not breed resentment, they breed clarity. They help you distinguish nourishing connections from destructive presences. The key is that boundaries arise not from fear, but from self-control. Walls are born of fear. Boundaries are born of wisdom. A wall rejects all risks, even good opportunities. A boundary allows you to choose what to keep and what to release. This is the subtle but vital difference. With boundaries, you live fully in the world, not withdrawn from it. You can engage, open, and explore while remaining grounded and dignified. Building boundaries is learning to balance open and closed, giving and keeping, connection and protection. They are the tool that preserves long-term peace without cutting off life. When you see you do not need walls, only wise boundaries, you find greater freedom. The freedom to love without fear of loss. The freedom to walk with others without losing yourself. The freedom to live with an open heart, protected not by fear but by wisdom. 10. Peace, the foundation of a complete life. Peace is not a rare reward, reserved only for times when everything goes well. It is the foundation that supports an entire life. A peaceful mind is like solid ground on which to build the house of life, while unrest is like laying a foundation on sand, where even a small wave can bring collapse. With peace, you gain clarity to make decisions, steadiness to pursue goals, openness to love, and resilience to endure hardship. Without peace, all else becomes fragile, for every effort is swallowed by the spiral of worry and tension. The Stoics affirmed that it is not external events that determine the quality of life, but the state of mind with which we face them. Peace is that essential state. A person may lose wealth, reputation, or status, but if peace remains, they retain the strength to rebuild. Conversely, one may have all external conditions in place, yet if the mind is restless, they will never taste fullness. This shows that peace is not merely a pleasant feeling, but the core condition of a meaningful and complete life. Peace is also the root of freedom. When the mind is not dragged by immediate reactions, you reclaim the power to live in alignment with your values. You are no longer dependent on recognition, no longer shaken by criticism, no longer swayed by passing changes. Such power arises only from an inner strength built on peace. With it, you can live actively rather than passively, respond instead of react, act by reason rather than be driven by fear. Moreover, peace is the soil in which healthy relationships grow. When the heart is calm, you love without turning love into dependence. You walk beside others without losing yourself. You set boundaries without bitterness. Peace allows you to open your heart while keeping your clarity, so that love becomes nourishment rather than a source of suffering. Peace is the foundation from which you see the deeper meaning of life. It allows you to look at events with wider eyes, to find lessons even in hardship and growth even in loss. A complete life does not come from avoiding storms, but from holding calm within the storm. Only when you treat peace as a foundation to be trained and guarded each day can you live with steadiness, clarity, and freedom. Reflecting on these principles, I see a clear truth. Peace is not a gift of fortune, but the fruit of discipline and awareness in every small choice. From learning to pause before emotion, to discerning which feelings deserve to be nurtured, to setting healthy boundaries and refusing to let others' actions become a burden on the mind. These are the practical steps that return us to agency. And it is this agency that opens the way to mastery of the soul and the preservation of clarity. To me, peace does not mean absolute silence or indifference to life. It is the ability to be present in every circumstance with steadiness of mind. It allows us to see events with objectivity, to let love remain free instead of becoming chains, and to let hardship teach without leaving scars. At its deepest level, peace is a responsibility each of us must train within ourselves. When it becomes the foundation, only then can we live fully unmoved by chaos, yet carrying dignity and freedom in every step. If you find these reflections valuable, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next content. And remember, life will always bring storms, But in each small choice, you can guard the flame of peace within. When that flame is kept steady, it lights the path so you may walk with firmness, strength, and freedom. See you in the next video.